Hello everyone, and welcome to the first in a series of short videos recapturing the history of running and racing in Wichita. I'm Mark Chamberlin, former runner, race director, and longtime observer of Wichita running. And joining me to guide us through these stories is Wichita's longtime race director, running guru, and historian of Wichita running and Kansas running, Clark Ensz. Clark, what are we going to see in this first episode?
Well, this first one, we're going to go back to 1982, the Wichita Marathon, which ended up being important for several reasons. One, of course, you were heavily involved in. It was one of the first marathons in the country to be televised, start to finish live. And the second thing is we set the state marathon record that day, 2:18:08, and that record has never been broken. It is still the fastest marathon ever run in the state of Kansas. And joining us today is going to be the man who set that record, Fred Torneden. It's been a long time, and in the Kansas record book, probably the most significant record is the one that has stood the longest, set by you right here where we're sitting right now in the 1982 Wichita Marathon, where you set the fastest marathon ever run in the state of Kansas. Do you remember much of that? It's a long time ago.
You know, with so many races and all the miles of trials and trials of miles, sometimes it's hard to remember every aspect, but I do remember the uniqueness of that race and Gary Gregory chasing me the whole way about maybe a minute back. So
right, a lot of people forget that he was only a minute 30 behind you.
Right.
Although, as I recall, you ran a fast first 10 miles and put a lot of that time on him in the first 10 miles.
And then the rest of it was just maintaining that minute lead pretty much.
Well, I know that was not a particularly fast time for you at that point in your career. You were running regularly in the 2:13, 2:14 range. So was it a really hard race for you, or was it just more you wanted to get in a good quality race?
More of a good quality race. I'd run 2:14:51 3 times exactly to the second, and then later I broke through to 2:12 and 2:11. So it was a hard run. There's nothing easy about any marathon, but it was a bit off of maybe my best times in other races.
Well, I've always wondered just how hard that was for you, because it's a marathon.
Oh, sure.
Miles.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe everyone appreciates all that you put into a marathon. I probably raced too much in hindsight, but it takes a lot out of you, and you just have so many in you, and you go to the well so many times, and then that's it. So you've got a window of time of a few years, and I had a pretty good run there for about 4 or 5 years.
Well, I don't think, I doubt that anybody would have thought that 33 years later, it would still be the record that sits on the books, and several people have made runs at it, but it's still there.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Yeah. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is that not only did you set that record, but you also ran what I believe is probably the greatest road race triumph by anybody from the state of Kansas, when in 1984 you ran and won the Twin Cities Marathon in a time that was the #1 time in the country at that point for an American marathoner. 2:11:34, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's a lot of people use 2:12 or faster as world-class times, and we thought it'd be the best time in the country. And then on a fast tailwind course, Ken Martin ran like 6 or 7 seconds faster,
just a little bit.
And so we were so close. But yet, still that's a time to be proud of, certainly.
So, give people a little background, because I know obviously '84. It was an Olympic trials year. I know you would have been one of the favorites for the marathon, but I think you ended up injured at the trials.
Well, I'd trained so much and was dealing with a lot of fatigue, so I bypassed the trials, had a great summer training. I lived in LA that summer, running on the beach, piling up the miles. And I had about 2 years there. I was doing a lot of long runs, had an aerobic base, and then I started doing more track sessions, and that seemed to really bring me a minute or two faster in the marathon.
Yeah, I know. I remember you showing me your training log from February, I believe, of '84, and I remember it was February, a short month, but I think it was somewhere around 650 miles.
Probably. I ran up to 180 some miles in 1 week. We were trying to run 20 plus miles a day, and I look in hindsight, it was overtraining, but we all felt like we had to do that to succeed, and if you survived it, you had no choice but to be good, I suppose.
Yeah, so, and obviously it worked for you. It really came out at Twin Cities. Now, I want to take you back to that Twin Cities, because I know I've heard you talk about the last 6 miles of that race, and I want you to tell people what that was like. And just to bring you back, I thought I would
Oh
recognize
my.
these.
Oh my. Yeah.
These are 2:11 marathon shoes.
I didn't even realize you had those. So
They ran exactly 26 miles.
Oh
I'm sure.
my.
I'm sure you
Right.
took them off, and you came back and you gave them to me. And there's something that I've always said. There's still, you can still see the blood stains,
Well,
because I know you had a pretty good blister
that's
there.
what I was going to ask. I lost a few toenails and blood in a few shoes in those marathons, so I'm surprised it isn't bloodier. But anyway.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look nearly as good. You can see it a lot more
Right.
when they were new. But I figured
That's
I'll
fun.
never own a pair of shoes any other way that ran
There you go.
2:11 marathons.
That's fun.
So I've kept those for all these years. But
Wow.
tell people what that was like. Those last 6 miles. There was a big prize money. This was for national rankings, and just the honor of winning one of the major marathons in the country. So let us know.
Well, quickly, this is the third marathon I was running when I was making a living off of running. So when you line up and there's no money in the bank account, that's a whole new pressure to succeed. And we went through under 5-minute pace, 49 minutes low at 10 miles. They had a split marker at the 20-mile mark, and it was an American record because the 20-mile distance wasn't run too often. And then there was a guy named Janik. He run his first marathon, and he had a bad spell, and I gapped him about 30 seconds. And then I was having trouble the last few miles because it's like a stair step. The very finish of that marathon's downhill, but getting up to that St. Paul Capitol building and then going up that hill, so the end of it was really brutal. And so I ended up running 5:30 miles at the end, so I was just holding on, but fortunately it was enough to win and run a PR time.
You had somebody pretty close to you, right?
Yeah, he's about 30 seconds back, so I was looking over. So I just gapped him that bad spell, and we stayed the same throughout the rest of the race pretty much. Yeah.
And as I recall, you were saying that you were fighting cramps pretty bad at that point?
Yeah, it's just fatigue. It's just part of running a marathon. They say you don't run your next marathon until you forgot how much it hurt. And when you're in the middle of that, you're thinking, why am I putting myself through this?
So for all of you marathoners out there who have thought that somewhere late in the last 6 miles, even a 2:11 marathoner has that moment where he thinks, why am I doing this to myself?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's still, like I say, that, by the way, for those of you who are not math, that's about 5:01 per mile.
Right.
For 26 miles. Still a pretty amazing accomplishment. And again, it was at that point the #1 time in the country.
Right. Well,
and timing a little better. You probably, if that could have been the Olympic trials race instead of that.
Would have, could have, and should have, you know.
Yeah. But the next year, I think you were picked to run at the World Cup Championships in
Japan.
Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's quite an honor too.
Oh, sure.
Do you still have your USA uniform?
Probably somewhere in some tub somewhere. So, oh, sure. You keep those kind of things.
Yeah, I am sure that you do.
Uh-huh.
A wonderful career, wonderful moments, and like I say, some of the best, and a marathon time that has stood 33 years of people going after it. So we'll see how long it goes.
Yeah.
But thanks a lot for coming
you.
out right to the place where it happened, right here by Cowtown. Fred Torneden.
Good.
Well, it really was amazing to hear Fred talk about his running experience in the 4 years or 5 years where he really dominated running, not just in Kansas, but across the country. So, great story with Fred.
You know, Fred really was amazing, particularly in the early stages of road racing in Kansas. In fact, I think another time we're going to have to talk to Fred some more, because Fred dominated those early periods. It would be interesting to hear how things have changed as he's watched it progress over the years.
Very good. If you like what you're seeing in this video, subscribe to this channel below, and that way you'll know when the next episode is ready for your viewing. I'm Mark Chamberlin. Thanks for joining us.